We begin as 12 people are dead after masked gunmen attacked the offices of a French satirical newspaper today. There is stunning and graphic video from the scene taken by photographers from a nearby rooftop. Now, this particular attack, it was focused and it was brutal. Among the dead, at least 2 police officers, and all of it happened in Paris, at a newspaper known for mocking political and religious figures, including the Prophet Muhammad. The newspaper had been firebombed in 2011, but it continued to publish the cartoons. We have team coverage for you with RT's Polly Boiko in Paris, Manila Chan in our DC newsroom, and Alexey Yaroshevsky in New York. And Polly, before I get to you, I just want to mention that we've just gotten word in from several different French newspapers who are now saying, and I apologize, this is in French, but they are saying that at least 3 suspects have been identified, including one who was born in 1980 in Paris. He's referred to as Saeed K, Sherif K, born 1982 in Paris, and Hamad M, born in 1996, also in Paris. Those 3 suspects just being identified by several French outlets. Paula, you're there in Paris right now. Tell us about what the mood is like on the ground.
Well, the city's on lockdown, and it's pretty obvious that there's a manhunt underway. There are policemen on absolutely every street. We had trouble just getting to the live position across the city. We arrived in from London in the Eurostar. There were armed police, soldiers. There are fire trucks, sirens blaring across the city. It's quite clear that the authorities are focusing all their efforts on trying to track down the perpetrators of this brutal attack. Now, in terms of the public response, well, there is a sense of shock across the city. There's just been a huge vigil held in the center of Paris. Some 15,000 people gathered to pay their respects for those journalists and policemen that were gunned down, but also talking about their defiance in the face of terrorism, saying that they refuse to be scared and that they're going to continue to stand up for their freedom of speech in France.
Absolutely. And Polly, let me ask you about this. We have reports of 3 suspects, as I mentioned, possibly identified at this point. There is a 4th suspect as well. Can you explain that part of it? It was 3 gunmen, is that correct?
Well, from reports, there were 3 gunmen that entered this building. The police spokespeople here say that the whole operation, if you like, was carried out with military precision. They called these men commandos. They said they knew who they were targeting. They walked into those offices and they shot those prominent cartoonists on that magazine. They shot them dead on the spot. But they emerged from the building and they got into a car with a 4th accomplice who then drove them through Paris, and they dropped that car that they were driving somewhere in the northeast suburbs of Paris, and they hijacked a different car. And from there on, nobody knows, and their whereabouts are a mystery to this point. That's the biggest mystery right now, and that's the issue that the police want to get to the bottom of as quickly as possible here in Paris.
Polly Boiko on the ground for us in Paris tonight. Thank you very much for that. Well, among the dead are the publisher and the editor-in-chief of this newspaper, Stéphane Charbonnet, as well as the lead cartoonist, Jean Cabou, also famed cartoonist Georges Walensky, and staff economist Bernard Mallet. In total, at least 10 of the Charlie Hebdo employees have been slain, and as I mentioned before, 2 policemen also confirmed dead. And Manila Chan here in our DC newsroom, let's turn to you because you've been putting together the timeline of this very orchestrated attack. Can you explain how it all played out?
Right. The timeline of events goes like this. 8:28 a.m. local time, French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo tweeted out a cartoon mocking ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. At 10 a.m., the Charlie team met for their weekly editorial meeting. Now, this is a crucial piece of information as much of the staff worked from home and are seldom all in the office together. So it's believed that the shooters had knowledge of the company's internal operations and had to have known that the meeting was actually underway. At 11:30, one of the other cartoonists, Corinne Ray, she returns to the office after picking up her child from daycare. She told French press that as she was about to enter the building, 2 masked gunmen approached her and threatened her. They demanded to be let into the building. She said that as they stormed the building, they shouted, "Allahu Akbar, God is great." and began shooting indiscriminately throughout the newsroom. Then Ms. Ray took cover under her desk as the terror went on for 5 minutes. Now, witnesses heard the gunmen rush out of the building, shouting that they've killed Charlie Hebdo in retaliation for the Prophet Muhammad. So shortly thereafter, police responded to the reports of shots fired. The police reportedly exchanged fire with the gunmen on the street. You can see in the eyewitness video that a policeman is wounded on the sidewalk, and one of the gunmen approaches him and shoots him dead at point-blank range. They then hop into that black getaway car, and then a third gunman is revealed. And that's what we've seen there in that video. In Washington, Manila Chan, RT.
Manila, thank you for that. And we should mention, of course, that as we watch this whole thing, it clearly was an orchestrated attack. It was not random, despite the fact that that tweet went out simply this morning. Alexey, let me turn to you in New York. Certainly a lot of response today from President Obama himself, Secretary of State John Kerry speaking out as well. How is the U.S. responding?
Well, we heard statements coming from the president that he viciously attacked those who believe the freedom of speech must be nullified. He also said that the United States would provide all the support to France, and that the intelligence cooperation between the two countries is still very, very strong. But at the same time, we haven't heard from the president on any particular measures in the U.S., whether there will be security measures stepped up or any more additional measures implemented in the country. Although one of the recent statements coming from the NYPD Commissioner Bratton here in New York City, that the NYPD has regrouped and moved officers, redeployed officers to certain sites and provided more security for those sites, although the locations have been undisclosed so far. The commissioner made it clear that despite what seems to be somewhat of a slowdown in the recent couple of weeks because of Eric Garner protests, I'm talking about a slowdown in arrests and frisks and search in the streets, that would not mean the police force in New York City would be less cautious and less wary of any potential terrorist threats. But I'd like to go back to several weeks ago when the hostage crisis in Sydney happened. We do remember the NYPD Deputy Commissioner for Counterterrorism and Intelligence, John Miller, saying that it was not a matter of if such an attack would happen in New York, it's only a question of when. So one of the top chiefs of the NYPD suggested that the officials in the city are preparing themselves for any potential attack of any kind of magnitude.
All right, Alexey Yaroshevsky, thank you for that. And in fact, all of our correspondents, we want to thank you all for your input on this. Polly Boiko, Manila Chan, and Alexey Yaroshevsky.